So organizations should know why they want to do it in the first place. It shouldn't be to just roll out a nice new tool, but they should have a clear idea.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process.
Welcome to another episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers. And in each of these episodes, we dive into the world of business process management that covers a wide range of areas. And we bring on we've got a wide range and diverse range of guests that we bring in from all different experiences and backgrounds, different organizations and different realms, whether it's the academic realm or the working as a consultant or working internally at organizations. And today I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Jakub Dvorak, who is a data scientist at Processand, and also Patrick Bogner, who is also a data scientist at Processand. They're also the podcast hosts at Mining Your Business, which I had the absolute privilege of appearing in a couple of weeks back. Patrick is from Germany/Austria, and Jakub is from Czech. Guys, thanks for joining me. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Daniel. I would say that it's our privilege to be on the show. Just seeing all the names and all the people who already appeared here. This is already huge for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a rarefied air to be in this podcast. So thank you for having us.
That's awesome. And what we might do to begin with is you guys obviously run your own podcast series, and I believe it's really, I mean, I've been on it, so I know it's very focused on process mining. So talk to us about where the podcast idea came from, which sort of guests are you talking to? Give our audience a little bit of background to your podcast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So the podcast is really dedicated to process mining. However, we are also including guests such as yourself, so from business process management and so on. So the idea really came up. I just talked to Patrick and said like how it would be great to have a podcast. So I have another podcast on my own in my free time that I'm doing on personal finance in Czech Republic. So I had a little more experience with that. And since we wanted to just get visible and really show the world what kind of work we do, and even talk to might even be customers in the future, and just to give them idea on how we are approaching our projects, what we are doing, what we can deliver for them, we just thought, hey, this could be an amazing opportunity to just go out and show the people what this process mining is all about. And interestingly, the second episode with what is process mining is having by far the most traction out there. So
yeah, I think the exact conversation about starting the podcast went the following way. I think we were talking about how everybody has a podcast and everybody has something to talk about, and some people will always find something that they're interested in, and then we just looked at each other and say, we should do a podcast. So that was kind of the impetus of how of the Mining Your Business podcast.
That's fantastic. That's great. I think that, with Process Pioneers, something that I believe in is that doesn't matter whether you've been doing what you're doing for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or 2 years, if you are slightly ahead in the journey than someone else, you've got something to share. You've got experiences or stories, or you've got, that next piece of the puzzle, or you've got that next stepping stone that you can help that next person on along the journey. Sometimes I have guests on the show that are a little bit hesitant because they're like, oh, you've interviewed the superstars in the BPM realm. And I'm like, people can learn from you as well. So, I'm excited to hear what, the knowledge, the stories, experiences that you guys have to bring. But speaking of, I guess, the topic of your podcast, talking about process mining, how did you both, when were you first introduced to this topic, and take us on a bit of a journey leading up to what you guys are doing today?
Yeah, so I think my first foray into kind of data mining as a whole was back at my Airbus days. I was working as a student there for like 2.5 years or so. And essentially I was in change management, and I was tracking Excel files with timestamps of emails and things like that, and kind of trying to show the people I was working for, like how long we're spending in this process and doing something like that. Little did I know that this was, what is I now know as process mining, but that was like my first kind of introduction to it. And after my time at Airbus, I came to Processand and learned that, hey, process mining can be so much bigger than scraping Outlook emails manually. So that was that.
Yeah, the common theme for me is the Excel, but that's about it. So I also entered process mining. So when I entered process mining, I didn't even know what process mining was. And to be honest, I didn't find out until like a couple of months later, already being a data scientist and doing process mining. So just don't tell my customers. But it was true. So I was lucky to land the position as a data scientist in back then, basically a company of three, which definitely helped me. But then I actually never looked back. I really fell in love with what I'm doing because I could actually see the impact that you can actually make, and seeing the scope of the data you're working with and the people you are presenting it to. I just saw this huge potential for it, and I just enjoyed it ever since.
That's fantastic. And in our podcast, the audience that are listening to this episode or will be, they're very diverse and come from a wide background, and similar to our guests, coming from a diverse background. But some of them are working. A lot of them are working in organisations where maybe they haven't adopted process mining yet, and so for some of them, this will be their first introduction to the topic of process mining, or they may have seen different pieces of information, but we're hopefully going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into it over the next 45 minutes or so. So what would you say are the biggest drivers of process mining for an organization? Obviously, every organization is starting at a different process maturity level, and I'm assuming there are different drivers. What are those drivers, the reasons why an organization will adopt process mining?
Well, I think a lot of the times, a lot of the established processes that they have are becoming a little bit more convoluted as they're getting larger, so the purchasing process, all of a sudden they have centers of excellence and they're doing things in different places and they're opening up offices in different places. And all these processes start to becoming a little bit more convoluted and a little bit almost impossible for a single person or even a single thing to really get an idea of what's happening. And as soon as that control, that oversight starts to slip a little bit, and that's usually kind of one of the big drivers that I see personally, is people wanting to see what the business is actually doing. So, and I guess the other one I would say is somebody sees a nice tool online and says, that looks cool, I want to do that in my company too. I guess that's the other one.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. So we are focusing mostly on implementation of the process mining tool from vendor Celonis, which is the leader of the market. And I gotta say that there are companies who just want to implement this tool because it is a hot thing. So it's really a driver. We like to see the other driver first, as Patrick was saying, to really want to deep dive into the processes, because as you are doing the podcast on business process management, usually what a business process management is, in my view, is like as should be. And then what we do in the process mining, we really collect all these digital traces, we put it together into something called event log, and we then visualize the process as is to the end users. And there are different initiatives within the companies, and as there are different purchasing organizations, different departments that are doing things differently, there are just so many deviations. And now let's even talk about like different systems there, that some part is implementing a processing tool for invoices and the other is using different tool, then they want to compare each other. And without process mining, it would be essentially or almost impossible to do. So what we can do with that technology, with the tool, is just to give them this view, this input on how their process really looks like.
Right. So instead of relying on, I guess, workshops where you're bringing stakeholders into the room and trying to discover a process through conversation, you're using data from existing systems to almost re-engineer, well, this is what the process actually looks like.
Precisely. That's really all we do. And it's really then if you are doing your job well, and obviously there are always some deviations, you always have to take a look that everything goes as expected from technical perspective as well. But at some point you just reach this state of the process that it's 98% reliable or 99% accurate, and that's good enough for most of the organizations to really base their work with, and just trust the data and look into the next steps, what they can do with it.
Right. And what would you say is the I guess foundation or fundamentals that you need to have in place as an organization before you can embark on a process mining journey? Is there a foundation that needs to be in place, or can every organization jump into this technology?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we were talking about this before the podcast, actually. So I think there need to be some requirements. So I think a specific size needs to be there. An organization needs to be of a certain size where the amount of data that you have, you can actually synthesize the processes out of it, and also then draw to some type of conclusions. 5% on 10 things, on 10 cases isn't a lot, right? So it's barely anything. So right. I mean, one of my first clients, I think, had very little cases. I think 7,000, and we were trying to figure out, what the saving is, what the inefficiencies are, and they just kept looking at it and saying, "Well, we just can't find it. There's like 3% inefficiency, and that amounts to saving of very, very little. So it didn't really make any sense."
Right.
So there needs to be a certain size requirement, I would say, to get into this.
Yeah. Okay. And
I really liked I'm reading this book from Lars Reinkemeyer, also one of the I would say top minds in process mining world. And I really liked what he wrote there in one of the first chapters, when he was literally saying that before you are even embarking on implementing process mining tool, you should focus on, and he calls it 3 Ps, which is people, purpose, and process traces. So the process traces, I think, really relates to Patrick was saying to a certain degree. So in his book, he's really saying we need to have a data to work with. So for our case, it's usually easy. We work with major organizations. They are using ERP systems, but there could be organizations that are trying to implement a process that is really not digitally traced, and then you have no work to do, right? But it also relates to that size, because if you just have too few cases, it's very difficult to even justify doing such a large scale project as process mining undoubtedly is. So that's the process traces. The second is a purpose. So organizations should know why they want to do it in the first place. It shouldn't be to just roll out a nice new tool, such process mining tools usually are, but they should have a clear idea behind what they want to do, be it transparency, be it other things such as throughput times, or minimizing or of changes and so on. So the purpose should be clear to everyone who is entering the process. And the third is people, and by people we mean someone who is able to take the initiative, be it people on the lower positions who are actually using the tool and or even building up new use cases, but also people who are in the higher management who are leading the initiative. So that those people should be able to come up with enough of initiative and lust for getting something out of it.
Yeah, actually, that's a really, really good point. I think I want to add to this. I think a lot of times it's also about capacity. What Jakub was saying with people, the people need to have initiative, and for them to have initiative, they need to have capacity to actually work on this tool, give input, give feedback, and things like that. All these things take an incredible amount of time out of their already busy day, So a certain amount of capacity needs to be there for this process mining implementation to really be one effective, and also long lasting with the people that are going to use it in the end.
Yes, right. Okay. And when an organization adopts process mining, as well as, making sure that there is capacity in their people, making sure that they have a clear purpose, a clear why behind what they're doing, what are the other challenges or the main challenges that you've noticed when an organization adopts process mining?
Technical setup. I think. I mean, I don't want to throw all of our clients under the bus, but I think it's also one of those things where, getting the things ready. Hey, we need to set up a server, and then you would think that's a task for 3 days can vastly outlast those 3 days. It can take a very, very long time just to get the basic setup right before we even do any process mining. Just getting all the things right, getting everything signed off, getting the data security officer knowing, okay, we're doing this to the data, they need to sign off. The Betriebsrat in Germany, so like people watching over that, their employees' data isn't being used for anything nefarious, they need to sign off on it. So before even anything starts, it can take such a long time just to get the technical stuff even running.
Yeah, from my perspective, the technical stuff, I 100% agree with Patrick that it takes a long time. And I had customers coming with an expectation that they would be mining their processes within 3 months. And within 3 months, we haven't even got close to setting up the infrastructure. So then you can actually lose the people and lose the touch with what is going on and lose the faith in the process mining tool. And I'll again revert to the people, because for me, those are the key parts of the project. Because at some point, even when you get past these technical issues, and we always do at some point, it's just a matter of time. And then you give them something. We usually start with implementing some of the basic processes, such as purchase to pay or order to cash, as a start with. But then it actually, again, is up to the people within the organization to take it to the next steps. And this is something that organizations are a lot of the times underestimating. So putting someone who can pick up where we left as an implementation partner for them and just go the next steps, setting up this whole governance model and making sure that the process mining is not just a 1-year project and then it ends, but it actually can be built up. And there are definitely organizations out there who have built up these process excellence departments and have enough of manpower to maintain their processes and keep building on what was already built, keep getting value out of it. But not every organization is even aware of this coming into the project. So they have this expectation that we will build up the process mining for them. They will get these quick wins, save these millions of dollars, which very often is very difficult to do. And then that's it. And then they will have a process forever. But there is way more into this, obviously.
Yes. Right. And it's obviously a worthwhile and obviously a valuable tool because there wouldn't be so many organizations talking about it or adopting it at the moment if it wasn't providing that value, despite as you were saying, Patrick, all of the technical hurdles and making sure that your people have capacity. And I do want to talk about the challenges, because I want to make sure that the organizations that will be adopting process mining in the future, they're aware of what they need to do to make sure it is a success. Because as you said, Jakub, we don't want it to be a 1-year thing and they move on like other technology implementations, that didn't work, we need to find something else. So, but I guess in talking about challenges, as you were saying there, I think it's good to talk about the wins as well, and what is possible with process mining, because obviously we presented a couple of big challenges there, but what is possible with process mining, and maybe if you can share and obviously censor the information that you can't, sort of all the details that you can't share, but I think our audience would love to hear a couple of experiences or stories from you where an organization did adopt process mining and it did deliver significant value to them.
Mm-hmm. Then I guess I'll start with this one. So I always had I was always lucky to work on these projects that were huge in size. And we had customers that were, for instance, extracting the data and wanted to visualize the data in process mining from 18 different ERP systems. So the volume was just through the roof, absolutely through the roof. And we actually managed to deliver. And for most of these users, this was even the first time that they could compare those systems to each other, because previously it was simply not possible, and there was not such a massive platform that would even be able to handle these amounts of data. And then with a process mining tool, we were able to give them this. And so for the first time, they actually had a full transparency on all of their processes across all of the organizations from all of the ERP systems. And together with this actually is leading me to one of the most favorite use cases for organizations that are a bit bigger in size, that are usually using different ERP systems. So we have this very favorite use case we love to implement for our customers, and that is a duplicate payment checker. Which one of our colleagues, Oksana Kostyuk, actually implemented and that's when we talk about machine learning, this is actually a machine learning use case. So what we can do there, having all those data in one place for the first time, we can actually compare different systems and check whether there could be a duplicate payments across different landscapes, which in normal SAP, normal ERP system, you can do, but it's only for that specific ERP systems. Once you have the data from 2 different systems, or maybe 18 different systems together in one platform, you can actually cross-check different systems at the same time. And we had customer that have this solution already in place for about a year and a half, and we are talking about hundreds, thousands of euros in savings per year. So it's really insane on how many duplicate payments there could even be. So this is one of my favorite stories, I like to say, when we are talking about the value getting out of a process mining.
Yeah, and honestly, Jakub, I couldn't have said it better. That is also one of the use cases that I wanted to mention, just because it's such a easy problem to understand. You scan an invoice 2 different times, and the optical character recognition that you're using scans a 0 as an O, and it shows up as a separate invoice. And now all of a sudden you have 2 separate invoices in your system, but there's really only one. And voila, you have the conundrum. So yeah, shout out to Oksana. She did a very, very good job doing that. I'm going to go a bit different route on my answer, I guess. For us, one of the projects I'm currently still working on, it's one of the big things was performance. So they had all their process mining scripts and everything running, but it was just very, 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 very slow. So we migrated all that to a different platform, and with that started improving the scripts. And I mean, these runtimes went from sometimes 2 to 3 days down to 4 hours, which meant, I mean, for the users, they got fresh data every single day now, sometimes even twice a day. All of a sudden, that week load that they did, no, now it's a daily load. Now they get to see their data a lot quicker. And what that allowed was actually doing actionable actionable actions. They're going to do actions on the things that are now possible to see every day. Some things take like 3 days to do. Now they can see them earlier. They can actually intervene into their processes before it's too late. So that's one of the things that, just speeding up some queries allowed them to do. It was huge.
That's right. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing those examples. I think, it's clear that there is huge potential in process mining. And for our audience that is listening right now, and as I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot that are in organizations that maybe haven't adopted process mining yet. How do you, how important is it to get buy-in from senior leadership to drive the initiative? And how do you go about getting that buy-in from senior leadership? Obviously, being able to share case studies like this is valuable and powerful. But, as someone working internally at an organization that hasn't experienced the value yet, how should they go about pitching the value to their senior leadership?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely getting any quick win from the initial implementation, because it's not so cheap to just start with the process mining and have some implementation partner do the hard work, and the initial investment can be subjectively quite high. So once you have something in place, you really have to focus on some MVP, some minimal viable product that you are able to use, you are comfortable using, you are trusting the data. and find a use case where you can point out and say, okay, so here is the thing that I don't like, I'm not happy with, and this is something I can pretty easily act on. So I read a use case where they found out that there was a wrongly set up automation bot that was basically just sending the invoices between each other, and it was resulting in a huge bottleneck in the process. And they just found out thanks to the process mining. And so these are things that you can just look, observe right away and basically fix in a no time. And you can put a number on them saying, okay, so if this happened, this will cost me 10 euros over its lifetime. And if you are such a customer that is dealing with millions of cases, millions of invoices, millions of purchase orders, whatever it is, if you are multiplying these 10 euros by even a fraction of this, you can come up with a pretty large numbers. So just focusing at the very beginning on something very easy, we like to call it a low hanging fruit. We're doing this SWOT analysis when we are putting like what is easily actionable or easily implementable solution and could potentially gain a huge improvement. So focus on these things and then bring it to the management. So this is what we've achieved in just 3 months, and we need more budget. Let's go deeper. Let's start going big.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally agree with what Jakub said. I think having, especially when you're talking to upper management, having actual cases where you're saving money in front of them that you're able to now visualize through the process mining is one of the biggest drivers. At the end of the day, it is a business that needs to obviously save some money where it can, and being able to show them exactly how much and where right there in a meeting can be huge. So other than that, I think we have this conversation a lot, where the driver really comes from. Is it from upper management down, who see a cool new tool and say, yeah, you should use this because I know this can be useful, and the people don't really know, don't really care, and don't know that process mining can really help? Or it comes from the other way, where they have these issues and then they bring it to upper management saying, hey, I have this tool, we have this problem, I've been telling you for years that this is a problem, and now we can finally tell you and show you, hey, this is an actual problem with actual real world consequences for the business. And they're able to finally get some validation for the thing that they've been thinking for years in their business and convince upper management that this is actually true.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, just to add up on this. So with the value, it's I think it was one of the big changes in last 2 or 3 years. So previously when I started, it was still all about transparency, show the process, and that's it. You have a process, you can do whatever with it, but the main thing was to have a process mining in place. While in the last couple of years, also with the changes that are going on with the main vendor that we are working for, they're really putting more emphasis on these actionable and proactive things you can do, having recommendations for improvements and transformations and so on and so forth. So getting bought in on this is very huge, because then at the end of the day, it's just another BI tool, regardless of what vendor you are using. It's still BI. It's collecting the data, showing you some nice numbers that could be or might not be correct. So you have to make sure that they are in the first place. And then you have some extra thing that is called the Process Explorer, which is very powerful, very often neglected, I'm afraid to say, but it's just the fact, because people are used to using tables and KPIs. But just give them a reason that it's not just another BI tool, that it's something more than just a BI tool, because organizations are spending so much money on just BI tools, on making sure that everything works well, collecting the data, paying the fees or the pricing models of those BI tools, and then also paying people like us, the implementation partners, to even help them roll them out. So most of the BI tools, or at least so I've heard, have very little return of investment. So this one is one of the few or process mining is one of the few that I believe can yield an actual return of investment at some point if you use it well and put some numbers on it.
That's great.
This is very true. I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, if you're talking about a purchase to pay process, for example, and you're looking at cash discounts, and you can, BI tools can show you, yeah, you've missed this so and so many cash discounts in the last year. And then people are going to say, well, fantastic, we lost so and so much money. But with process mining, I guess, or the platform that allows it can say, well, there's potentially so and so much open right now if we take it. Press the button and you've got it. And it's like one of those things that going from knowing how much you've lost to what you could potentially stop saving all in one thing and all in one place is huge.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And sorry. And some of these, I just wanted to add to this that I know even companies that are doing it this way, that they build a report that should give them an input into something such as this cash discount. And this is a valid approach, and I don't have anything against it. But in my opinion, just to develop such a report is way more time consuming than giving them a process mining, which just shows it as it is, and then learn or teach the users on how to use it so that they can find this specific information in it. Because with process mining tool, you just have this very, I would call it like a sandbox that you can do essentially anything with. While when you do the reporting, and I see customers doing both, so starting with process mining and going back to reporting, but also starting with reporting and then going to process mining. So once you have a report, you are only focused on this one thing, and you are essentially, you say, okay, so somebody built me this and it has to be correct. But if you have the process mining, you can actually build it in a sense yourself, and then just act on it.
Yes, right. No, that's amazing. And so instead of having a tool that's just pointing out that there's a problem, it's actually pointing out the problem and telling you where you need to focus on to fix it.
Correct.
Yeah, that's great. And looking at, I guess, taking into consideration the 80-20 rule, where 80% of our value comes from 20% of the work that we put in. Does that apply to process mining? And if so, have you noticed that there are certain processes which, if you apply process mining on, that's where the biggest return's going to come from, or is it very different depending on the organization or the industry?
No, I think that for that reason, most of the companies are starting with purchase to pay or order to cash, because those are usually quite standardized, especially if your organization is running on SAP system. And also for us, for implementation partner, to go there, implement the process takes less and less time, as even us are getting, we are also getting our internal processes improved, and we know how to roll it out quite fast. So that means that already 2 weeks from the moment we have data, or 2 to 3 weeks, a customer can actually have a report where most of the activities, so the most important ones, are already mapped. And this is amazing for them, because they can just go ahead and start using it, and then just keep improving those 20%. So you have 80% of the process. You can already start looking into it and start getting some value out of it. And then we just go and focus on the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things is purchase to pay, and then accounts payable, just because that seems like, well, we're buying stuff, so we're spending money. So let's figure out how to spend less money or spend it better. So that's one of the first things that people usually look at.
Yeah. Okay, great. And as well as obviously looking to get buy-in from senior leadership, Patrick, you obviously mentioned like you can have that top-down approach or the bottom-up approach. How do you get buy-in from those people who you're actually extracting the data or mining their processes, the processes they're doing? So obviously that's going to be highlighting bottlenecks, weaknesses in their processes. It's going to provide transparency around how their processes are being performed. Are they meeting their KPIs? Are they conforming to the process that has been given to them? How do you get buy-in from the process participants? Because I'd imagine that potentially by introducing a process mining solution, you could come across resistance from these people, especially if they clue on that, hey, this new solution that's going to expose all of my weaknesses, that's going to expose where maybe I'm dropping the ball. So how do you get buy-in? How do you bring these people on for the journey as well?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think a lot of the times focusing not on that one day you remember when you changed a delivery time 10 times because you couldn't figure it out, like it's not going to be a focus on that. It's not going to be accusatory. It's not going to be anything nefarious, I think this is a point that Jakub mentioned, getting the purpose, like having people aligned on the purpose of why they're doing it, can be huge. And I think if you were to do this in Germany, where like the data protection laws are pretty severe, strong, it's more difficult to kind of get user information. And so, it's all anonymized anyway, but even then there's still going to be some resistance. So I think focusing on the purpose of why you're doing it and figuring out how to get there so they can eventually be doing some processes better or relieve some of their headaches that they have in the process, can be, I think, one of the biggest drivers there.
Yeah, just not taking it personally, because at the end of the day, it's also helping you and your job to be performed better. So you can only gain on that. Maybe you don't like doing some repetitive manual work every day, and process mining can actually help you with that, so that you can find something else that you would probably even enjoy more to do in the first place, and not putting up numbers into SAP every day, rather have a bot doing it for you so that you can really start getting more into the process yourself.
Yeah, this is actually one of the biggest things that people are afraid of, that, these with talks of automation and things, that their job's going to go away and they'll be let go and things like that. But what usually ends up happening is that they finally have time to do the things they actually wanted to do and use their brain and their knowledge of the business to figure out a way to help it in a different way they haven't done before. So there's always work to be done. Now they just have more time and more resources to actually do their work more efficiently, to figure out how to focus on different parts that they didn't even know they could improve.
That's great. That's awesome. And looking back over the last 18 months that we've been through, obviously COVID has really turned the world on its head, and it has affected many different organizations from many different industries. For some organizations, it's created the environment for them to thrive. New ideas have come out of this last 18 months, but it's also been a struggle for a lot of organizations as well, as supply chains have been really messed up, and people have to think of a new way of delivering value to their customers. So looking at the last 18 months, how has process mining played a part? And do you think that it's been brought up the priority list? Or what do you sort of notice? What have you noticed over the last 18 months when it comes to process mining?
Oh, I think it goes both ways. I think for some organizations, BI, process mining, data analytics, all these initiatives were immediately stamped into the ground, saying we have to focus on the core business. We have to focus that our supply chains are secure and things like that. So we're not going to spend money on things to tell us that our supply chains aren't doing very well right now. So that was one aspect, but there was also another sect of enterprises that said, we want to know exactly how much it's impacting, and maybe the location where it's impacting the most, and maybe find some way to compare them, and maybe work out something. Maybe one solution in this place that has had the same issue will also work now in this other place. So I think it just depends on the organization. Some that believe more in the BI and more that are more staunchly for the core business and saving money in these tough times. Then I guess it depends on what industry they're in and which ones have been more harder hit than others, I guess I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually you might even find out that the vendor that was providing you with some material was not very efficient in the first place already before the crisis. And then you can actually verify, okay, so now it's even worse. So maybe I can actually start to prioritize the one that is probably cheaper, is faster, is more responsive, and have an actual data to back up your decision with. So diversifying your supply chain, your vendors, your locations, and having the data to back this up is also huge. So especially in the corona, you could see that in every report, in every BI report, essentially, you just saw this huge drop in everything. Whatever it was just through the roof. And if you had some machine learning algorithms in place to predicting whatever, your logic was completely off just by this 1 or 2 months that happened in the February and March 2020. So having process mining in place, you can not only verify it, but look at the exact impact that it could have had on your cash flow, on your delivery times, and maybe think about the ways, although this is something that is very difficult to predict in the future, but just having a more diversified portfolio of your options that you have for your business.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, there's also organizations that built in the COVID-19, the dashboard, seeing how many cases and things like that into their analyses, just to figure out, hey, this country's getting a little bit more red, and let's focus on that. Let's click on that and see how the curve is doing and how that's affecting it. So a lot of the times I was putting in COVID information into dashboards itself. So that was also fun.
Yeah, right. That's great. And obviously you guys run your own podcast, Mining Your Business, that we touched on at the beginning there. What are some of the biggest takeaways that you guys have got out of that podcast series, sitting down with your various guests that I'm assuming are, most of them are from the process mining space as well?
So for me personally, it's actually talking to the guests that are not directly with process mining, which are either business people who, first of all, have a whole different ideas or expectations from what we are doing than we do, because we are mostly, I would say, IT guys who come there, implement it, and then just leave to another customer. But these people who then are left with the tool and have to use it, so their insights are, I would say, invaluable for us, because we can not only improve ourselves on it, but also tell our colleagues on, or change the way that we are working. And even talking to you were our guest, and was a great talk to you. And I really liked what you said, that what is the key is just to keep talking to the people, like on ongoing basis. It's not only about the workshops, but it's about getting in touch with them on a regular basis. And I have a project right now where I applied this approach. So I said, okay, we are in the implementation phase, but so that you get accustomed to the tool, let's have every second day, let's have 30-minute call where we discuss what we've already implemented in the last 2 days or the last 48 hours. So you discuss, we have this instant feedback loop. They are getting familiar with it on the go. And before you even get to the point of value creation, they are already almost proficient in the tool, because they saw it rising from the ashes all the way to where it is now. So this was, for me, this was a great learning experience. I implemented it right away, and I have to say it works like charm. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, Daniel, on your take on keep asking questions, ask questions all the time, get really into the minds of the people that you're talking to, was, I think, one of the biggest things that I took away. But in general, I think a lot of the times Jakub comes with some guests and saying, hey, we're having this guy on. And I look him up, it's like, why? Why would we do this? And then, we talk to them, and I prepare for the episode. Oh, well, I guess we could do a little bit of that. We could learn a little bit of that. And then by the end of it, I was like, I learned so much. This person opened my eyes to all the things that I didn't know. So it's always a very nice conversation. So I think there's something to be learned from every guest that we have on. And I think it's just more surprising that regardless of who you speak to, you always learn something new. So that's why I agree with Jakub. The less the people talk about process mining that we actually want to talk about, the more I think our listeners have from it, and I think I have from it.
That's amazing.
Turns out the different people from different branches with different experience, with different age, have a different set of knowledge that they can share. And it's actually
Wow.
very interesting, as there are never two people with the same knowledge set. So you just got to go to and talk to all of them.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think we can see that in the startup space with, you know, companies that are disrupting entire industries. You know, the guys that started companies like Airbnb, you know, they're not from the hospitality space. They weren't from the tourism space, but they've disrupted an entire, you know, the entire hospitality industry because they came in with a different perspective or a different way of delivering value to the end consumer. You can see it in Uber. I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure what the background of the guys were that started Uber, but they've obviously entered that space and completely flipped that on its head because, you know, and, you know, it'll work for my story if they didn't come from the industry because they're coming into a space where, you know, they don't have these, I guess, existing or preconceived ideas of like, no, this is the way that the value must be delivered. It can't, you know, we can't do these other ways because traditionally it's never been done like that. I think when people are coming into new industries and exploring what's possible, that's where, you know, that's where you can disrupt entire industries. And same for large organizations. I feel like there's an opportunity there for, you know, financial services to learn from utilities, or utilities to learn from whatever else, you know, like whatever other industry that might be pioneering in the space as well. But I guess talking about the future of process mining, trends that you're noticing, or what you're expecting to see over the next 3 to 5 years time, where is the process mining space headed, and what should organizations be thinking about now so that they can catch this process mining wave and benefit from it?
I would say that, I guess two things. One of those would be these actions that we've mentioned, not just using it as a reporting tool, figuring out where am I doing anything wrong, but actually using that to actually improve the business. So going straight from there to the action, figuring out how to automatically put that in. So you really have to do very little to improve your process. So figuring out how to get from the report to the action to figure out how to make it better. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges I think that's going to be happening soon. But also on the other hand, I would say, because since we're dealing with so many enterprises and they have so much data, like Jakub mentioned, so many ERP systems across so many different places, figuring out how to put that together, we finally have a pretty good use case for using machine learning. So one of the things that one of our guests, Matthias Stierle, talked about was figuring out how to use a machine learning on the event log itself. So figuring out how these activities kind of fit together and where the inefficiencies lie in ways that, you know, machine learning algorithms do in unexplainable ways, but they'll show you inefficiencies. And I think the use case is there for doing a whole lot more in that space. And so hardware and technological improvements in the machine learning space will also be a part of that.
Yeah. While doing process mining, a lot of enterprises unknowingly or not realizing are migrating a lot of data that have never been migrated before to some data lake, cloud data lake that these process mining vendors are using. And then suddenly they actually have this, finally have this data lake full of data that you can connect in whatever way you want. You don't have to be really afraid to break anything because it's not your system. And you can actually start doing actual data science on them. So just having this platform, whether it's used for process mining or not, is huge for a company that really wants to take the digitalization to the next step, because you have it and now it's all up to you what you can do with it.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, Patrick and Jakub, I just want to thank you guys for sitting down with me today. We've certainly been able to dive into process mining over the last 40 minutes or 50 minutes or however long it's been. And, I've certainly been learning a lot from you guys. And it is a very exciting topic to talk about and to really unpack. I think because it is a relatively new topic. Well, I mean, for my audience, I would say for a lot of them, it is a new topic, and they're learning about it for the first time. So I know that what we've been able to touch on today, they'll be able to learn a lot from. And I know that for some of them, it's going to spark a thought or pique their interest in terms of, well, how can we use process mining in our organization? Which are our critical or core processes that we really need to pay more attention to or dive into? And I think, my hope is that from this conversation, it is going to spark these conversations internally, and maybe they're going to see some momentum in this space. So I just want to thank you both for sitting down with me today. It's been an absolute privilege.
Oh, thank you, Daniel. I agree with you. I hope your listeners find something useful, a little bit more knowledge about process mining, learn a little bit from our conversation today. So thank you for taking the time and speaking with us.
Yeah, pleasure is ours, Daniel. Thank you for inviting us. I would just say, yeah, our podcast slightly more on the process mining topic. So if you really want to find out more, we already have almost 20 episodes and getting more and more interesting guests, including yourselves, coming up very soon. Or by the time this is out, you will already be there. So definitely go out to listen. And yeah, just get in touch. If you have any questions, we are always happy to help.